High-speed jets patrolling the skies close to one of America's Great Lakes in Michigan on Sunday. Captured by a local from his back garden and posted on social media after news that for the third time in as many days, the US had spotted and shot down an unidentified object, this time in the skies above Lake Huron.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the U.S. military shot down objects over Alaska, Canada's Yukon Territory, and Lake Huron.
Yesterday's downing followed similar discoveries in the sky above Alaska on Friday and then the Yukon Territory in Canada on Saturday. Both those objects were also shot down, but where they came from or what their purpose was has not yet been disclosed. Only that they were both balloon-like objects.
It's hit. It's going down.
Just like the massive Chinese spy balloon that was shot down off the coast of South Carolina on February the 4th.
What's gone on the last, 2 weeks or so, 10 days, has been nothing short of craziness. And the military needs to have a plan to not only determine what's out there, but determine the dangers that go with it.
While recovery efforts for the Chinese balloon are still underway, the US has said definitively that it was part of a massive global surveillance operation by Beijing covering at least 40 countries. And while it's still too early to say where the three latest objects came from, aerospace experts like Major General Scott Clancy say if it looks like surveillance and smells like surveillance.
This is not Bob and his balloon in the backyard, that's floating these things around. This is a level of technology or innovative technology that is not indicative of a private company or someone else. It's indicative of that which a nation state would have. This, to me, is the concerted effort of an organization that is attempting to garner significant information.
China said today that America was simply using missiles to hype the situation and claimed America employed exactly the same surveillance tactics.
Since last year, US high-altitude balloons have illegally flown over China's airspace more than 10 times. The US should first reflect on itself and change course, rather than smear others and instigate confrontation.
Not a smear, said the White House today. It's simply a fact. It claimed that the Chinese balloon was trying to spy on America.
There is no question in our minds that that system was designed to surveil, that was an intelligence asset. I'll leave it there.
But the same cannot be said of the three mystery objects shot down by the US military over the weekend. They've ruled out extraterrestrials, that much we do know. But what they were, their purpose, and who owned them is yet to be determined.
Well, let's speak now to Gregory Falco, an aerospace security expert at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, who also advises the US Homeland Security Department. Is this really brand new? Have we not seen these sorts of things before?
Absolutely not. We definitely see these things all the time. It's not always in public image, and we also don't always have such a big response to them. However, this is not uncommon background espionage activities that we see across nation states.
And why do you think they seem to care so much more about a balloon than a spy satellite?
Got the public image. That's one part of it. This is also something that's a little unusual to, again, have such public attention drawn to. It was a rather large balloon, which is something that we often don't see a heck of a lot of. And it's very interesting to be able to have this discourse. We're now seeing multiple of them over time as part of a hybrid satellite network architecture, which is what we're probably experiencing with all these balloons right now.
Right, so what do you think the purpose of these balloons is? I mean, what can they do that you can't do from higher up?
Well, they can hover, which is kind of interesting, right? We can have some autonomous navigation so that they're able to stay in one place and look at get high radar collective information at a very specific point in time. They're also able to relay data in a way that we can't have for satellite communication. And so I think the imagery, we're not going to get a heck of a lot better imagery on these systems than we would on a satellite. However, we could be able to do better triangulation of communication assets and perhaps do slightly better eavesdropping on certain signals.
And does the US and other Western allies use them as well, or is this just a a Chinese thing?
Oh, absolutely. This is done by all, let's call it first world top tech nation states as part of espionage activities.
So how do they get launched?
Well, they're usually launched from major ground stations and launch facilities. Yeah, as you see, this is quite a big structure. And so there is a lot of hypotheses going on right now about where this one actually originated or where the series of them originated. China does have what they call climate ground stations and locations outside of China. So, for example, in the Svalbard Islands, in Iceland, they have locations where they're doing satellite monitoring from. It's not totally unreasonable for us to think that maybe they launched them from a closer site, but also since they have autonomous navigation, maybe they did come all the way from China here.
I mean, presumably they could also be used for just sort of political mischief rather than surveillance. I mean, you know, if it's obviously really winding up the Americans, then you might decide to send loads more.
Absolutely, it's possible, but we also do know that there has been a campaign over the past year or so that China has been trying to do mass surveillance of a whole bunch of different countries, not just the U.S., using these high altitude platforms. And balloons are just one of a number of these different high altitude assets that they're probably engaging.
So far, the operations to destroy these things seem to be very sophisticated and extremely expensive. Is that entirely necessary?
Probably not. The reality is that you can pop these balloons in a relatively simple way. You also don't need these very expensive missile systems to demonstrate that show of force for these balloons. In fact, if you were to just shoot the balloons, you'd be able to have the balloon go down in altitude more slowly and then perhaps be able to preserve the payloads better so that you can do more reverse engineering on those objects. So I think that the missiles that have been used to down these assets have been definitely a show of force and political pressure being placed on the Defense Department.
So it's not that the balloons are too high up for aircraft?
No, in fact, we've seen images now of U.S. aircraft flying alongside the balloons, and obviously these U.S. aircraft have weapon systems on them, and they're able to down these balloons by other means.
Right, and I mean, when do you think we will know a little bit more about what these other UFOs are?
I think that the U.S., while I can't speak for what the U.S. is thinking in terms of timing, I think that we're trying to have a very good sense of exactly what's going on so we can share that information with the public. It's not something that's a very cut and dry answer right now without having done the full reconnaissance on these missions.
I mean, what else could they be?
They're surveillance balloons, right?
Yeah.
These are radar systems. They're part of the hybrid communication architecture for relaying data from the U.S. back to China.